These days, Norway is the Marxist paradise. There are just a few problems with this perspective.
Turns out that Ben Shapiro has always been full of crap. And we're going to do a little throwback video here to where Sam Seder takes a look at Ben Shapiro at the time. This is from 6 years ago, so we'll get ready for some baby faces. Where he talks about socialism, and it becomes immediately clear that he, even back then, didn't know what he was talking about. Let's take a look together.
One thing we got to watch out, though, for, Jamie, is socialism. And fortunately, they have given Ben Shapiro a television program on TV.
Best impression you have.
To tell us the Socialism Watch. This is the Ben Shapiro election special.
I love it when these folks do impressions of each other. It just tickles me to no end.
Socialism Watch. Here is
socialism on the ballot. Maybe.
There we go.
Cuba's gone out of fashion. Turns out that when people are floating 1950s Chevys into the Atlantic Ocean, that's kind of a bad sign. These days, Norway is the Marxist paradise. There are just a few problems with this perspective. First off, Norway isn't socialist. It's a capitalist country burdened with massively expensive socialist redistribution programs.
They're burdened with it. You know who burdened them with it? The country itself burdened themselves with it. In other words, it's not a burden. It's something they've chosen to adopt.
I thought it was Cuba.
Well, he was talking Cuba first. Now, of course, what he wasn't saying about Cuba is that the reason why they have a Chevy in the water is because of the blockade, the economic
blockade,
right? That we've had
you're
on
blaming
Cuba.
white guys again,
right? Exactly.
For the embargo on Cuba.
We wouldn't allow them. We wouldn't allow for anybody to sell them vehicles. So we're going to mock them for having old vehicles. Good.
Expensive socialist redistribution programs. Norway ranks 23rd in the world in business climate compared with the United States at 18th.
Pause it. So,
whoa.
Ben Shapiro.
Stop the presses.
Ben Shapiro has just made a very strong argument that you can have extreme wealth redistribution in this country, and we could virtually maintain our world business climate ranking, even from the Heritage Foundation. I mean, because surely the only thing that we don't have, that we have going for us is not just that we don't have massive wealth redistribution. There's got to be other things, right? It's America. We're number one, maybe 18. And
that's so great, though. It's like if we did all of these incredible social interventions, it would only knock us 5 points down the list.
Well, no. Beautiful. I mean, it probably wouldn't. Yeah. It would probably just knock us to 19th. And what's the difference between 18th and 19th? But I don't know that that's his point, is it?
Norway ranks 23rd in the world in business climate compared with the United States at 18th. As for Norway's social programs, its spending habits have been subsidized by an enormous oil slush fund and supremely high taxes.
So there we should do it. The only way to do this is to get enormously high taxes. That's fine. And he's saying that we should expropriate all of the oil digging that's going on in this country. Now, I don't know if I would go that far. I'd probably do the refineries. I would nationalize, but it is an interesting idea. It works in Alaska. That money, at least in some part, comes from the oil that is dug up there. Maybe we should do a part of that.
I also just like it's public, so it's a slush fund. Like, is Exxon a giant slush fund?
Yes.
Because it's Purdue. Okay, well, fair enough. It's all the economy is a slush fund. I'm into it.
I tax it. Here is the reality. Norway's successes, lower levels of income inequality, high levels of prosperity, those predate the rise of Norway's socialist infrastructure. They're actually a result of Nordic social capital, high levels of social trust, and cultural homogeneity. Presumably, President Obama would tell Americans that Scandinavia is a sort of heaven.
Pause it. So, in other words, socialism hasn't made things any worse, yet it clearly has made for a lot more benefits to people.
At a time where inequality is rising in more capitalist economies, socialist one is staying more inequality.
The reason why, it's because there's something special about the Nords.
There's a saying, Norway's a little slice of heaven.
Check their amygdalas.
Total heaven.
The Obama years. Can anybody remember the Obama years?
Earth.
In Scandinavia, he'd say, there's no poverty. Well, as Milton Friedman responded to a similar statement, In America, among Scandinavians, there's no poverty either. Social capital matters. Culture matters. That social capital is being actively undermined by Norway's generous welfare state, which actually pays people not to work. As The Economist wrote in 2015, quote, Norwegians have coined a verb, to nav, meaning to get money from NAV, the state's benefits agency. That welfare state policy also endangers immigrant social and economic mobility. As of 2017, the Norwegian Labor and Welfare Administration found that about half the total number of people in Norway receiving social welfare payments were immigrants. That report also stated that many of those immigrants
what is social welfare payments in Norway look like? Yeah, right? Like they get health care. They're getting all sorts of different subsidies in terms of work. Like, what does social welfare look like? I'm curious, but
everything sounds fine so far.
Receiving social welfare payments were immigrants. That report also stated that many of those immigrants were living in poverty-like conditions.
Well, that's probably why they were eligible for the welfare. But what he fails to argue is what's the problem?
The only problem, it seems to me, is they need to make the social welfare payments higher.
Well, the problem, of course, is that these are immigrants, right? You can't be giving state money to immigrants. You're taking money from the from the citizens and you're giving it away to immigrants.
It sounds like he's trying to argue is that there's something fundamentally better about the Nords.
Yeah, I wonder what that is.
Well, in his mind, it seems like he's arguing that they're homogenous, so they can afford to spread resources around.
No, it's the classic, they're all white. So they have high social trust, which is why they have a great economy, and they can have the right wing says they have high social capital, which is why their capitalism works, and then the neoliberals say they have homogeneity, which is why they're able to have a social safety net, and they're both just lanes for arguing against why we can't have universal health care and so on here.
It sounds like he is making an argument that you can genetically have a higher class than other people, right? He's tying it to race and racial homogeneity.
Yeah, I mean, they shift to culture now, but we know.
Yeah, but it's the same.
Pretty amazing that the top three largest...
That's a good point. That language shift is important. Culture, right? Culture is one of those buzzwords that basically people like white nationalists use. Well, what about our culture? And what they really mean is our white Christian culture.
Amounts of Scandinavians in the country are in blue states.
Also, I know, from North Dakota, a lot of those people were given land by the United States government when they came over here and told if they farmed it for a period of years, they could just have that.
Hey.
Right.
Shut up.
And I imagine, unlike the black folk who were given land at that time or bought land, didn't have it taken away by people in the Midwest. Literally have it taken away.
Boy, it's fun. It's fun to see them all looking so young. I wish I could just dial the clock back on myself that way. I do love when they do impersonations of each other. It just tickles me. Anyway, this idea of socialism as this, socialism, it's evil, it's God's going to destroy the fabric of our American whatever. Here we are. We got people murdering CEOs. We've got, the screws have just gotten tighter and tighter. A single-payer healthcare system. Everybody else has got one. Why can't we have one, right? If that's socialism, is it such a dirty word? First of all, I don't think, we're talking about a lot of different kinds of things when we're talking about socialism. They use it, the right uses it like a stain, like a dirty word, like it's Hitler, but I think there's lots of different ways we can implement things that are better social safety nets here without stopping being a capitalist society, right? That's just never going to happen in America. It's woven into the fabric of the very concept of the country, I think. But things could be a hell of a lot better. I want to know what you think in the comments.